Yeah, you'll have to hit something to say continue.
All right.
Well, it's live.
Yeah.
Here we are.
All right, I start seeing people coming in right now. So hello, everybody. Good morning from a very sunny Traverse City today. We're excited to see the sun.
And we're just connecting on Facebook now. So Facebook and Zoom made a change in their interface, but it looks like we're connecting and going well there. So hello to those of us coming in and joining us here in the Zoom webinar, and hello to the world on Facebook.
Oh.
It's always, I talked to somebody on the phone yesterday. I see him here right now. I see Alan. Alan, I see your name, and I made the comment to him, I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And he's like, wait, you're going to be able to see me? And I said, no, even just seeing your name is in today's world is very reassuring. So it's good to see some new names, some familiar names. So welcome, everybody. We'll let everybody get situated. If you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, it's a great way to sit back and listen to this conversation today.
All right, those of us joining on Zoom for our webinar today, thank you for joining us in our attendee capacity. You can feed any comments or questions or greetings into the chat. Christy and I will be monitoring that, and if you do have questions, we'll feed them into the conversation as appropriate. We do also have the Q&A feature going in our Zoom, so you can use that for questions if that feels more appropriate. We'll check there too. We will be live on Facebook. We check over there for comments too. If you're catching us on Facebook after the fact, go ahead and ask your questions and feed your comments there too. We'll try to get them when we can. We're just happy to have you here as part of our conversation today.
All right, should we get started?
I think we should.
All right, we got a lot to do today. So hello, everybody. My name is Christy Bodek. I am the Education and Outreach Director here in sunny Traverse City today. I've had to move around a little bit because it's so sunny. I'm not complaining. It's just an unusual experience. So I'm going to do one little plug. If you're in the Traverse City area, we have our spring art market opening up on Tuesday. So if you are, stop by. I'd love to see you. Masks are required, and it's an opportunity to go to an indoor art fair. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Liz, because like I said, you're in for a treat.
Hi, everybody. I am Liz Erlowine. I am Visual Arts Director for Crooked Tree Art Center. I am based in Petoskey, Michigan. I am joining you from our Bonfield Gallery at Crooked Tree Art Center, Petoskey. I am sitting in our exhibit, A Lands Conservancy, Reclaiming Nature, Photographs by Raymond Gaynor. Our guest today is artist Raymond Gaynor. By way of introduction, I'm just going to frame a little bit about why we're here, why I'm here in the space, and then we'll dig into our conversation. So Raymond Gaynor is a Harbor Springs-based artist. I met him through the Crooked Tree Art Center, I believe through the Crooked Tree Photographic Society is how
right.
Right. And it's really been phenomenal for me joining the staff a few years ago and really getting to know artists working in the region, especially through these groups and collectives and kind of connecting through creativity here at the Art Center. And then I get to see, who's doing what and what can I follow, and how is work expanding and growing. And Raymond's work stuck out to me from, I think, one of our juried shows kind of early on, my early days with Crooked Tree. And so it's been a joy to watch his work kind of progress over the past few years. And Christy and I host a Artist Guild meetup every other week, virtually on Zoom with the Crooked Tree Art Center Artist Guild, which is a membership level with Crooked Tree, and we can feed some info into the chat if you're interested in knowing more about that. But basically, Raymond shared some of his recent projects with us at that time, and he shared with me, or with us, some images that he was taking of the Offield Family Viewlands, which is a property that probably at the time, and we'll dig into this and Raymond can clarify for me in just a moment here, at the time perhaps was still a project with the Conservancy. They were working to finish the acquisition and make that piece really open to the public. But he shared these beautiful photographs with me of this special place here in northern Michigan. And I was really intrigued by not only the images, but the idea of documenting these spaces here in northern Michigan, specifically the concept of capturing land as it is being conserved, or as the land is conserving itself, which is really what some of the topics or questions and ideas that have come through this work, as Ray and I have been talking about it, over the past year. So he shared that image. I was intrigued. I said, hey, Ray, do you have more? What else do you have going on with this particular idea? Have you dug into it a bit more? And he said, well, yes, of course. So, it's been a bit of a road, for all of us as we've been navigating COVID restrictions and challenges for bringing people publicly into the space to engage with artwork. So we had some date shifts, which really ended up being sort of fortunate for us because Ray was able to get out and get some more images. So anyway, we are now here. The show opened on Monday. Again, I'm in the gallery. And this talk today is really a chance for us to hear from Raymond about his work, about this project, other work that provides some context for us to consider it, and a little bit about the collaboration here between the artist, Crooked Tree, and as Little Traverse Conservancy as well. So we can do a virtual clap to welcome our special guest here today, Raymond Gaynor. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you now, Ray, and you can go ahead and say hi to everybody.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Liz and Christy. It's been just a treat to work with both of you. You're just so supportive in everything that we're doing for all the artists, and not only myself, but it's just a great organization. And I really encourage everyone on the call that if you're not part of Crooked Tree Art Center, really look into it. It's a fabulous organization, fabulous staff, and just terrific for artists and also for viewers and so forth, people who love art. I thought maybe I would talk a little bit about myself, give you a little bit of a background about myself. And I saw one piece in the paper that I position myself as an inspiring artist, and they're saying, well, you're a little old for that, but but I've been doing photography for over 30 years. And so a little bit of a background on that. I've always been impressed by art and the different mediums and so forth, but I can't draw a straight line. And so I tried freehand drawing and it just didn't work out. I needed something a little bit more structured. And photography was one thing that really, I think I gravitated towards. What I really enjoyed about it was seeing some images on a wall, especially like a black and white image, and seeing that, and just the simplicity of it, the tonal aspects of it. There was so much emotion that came out of it that I said, I'd really like to get more involved in it. And so I started to do a lot of self-teaching and trying to use that as a way of creating some art. And I started actually in film, doing that, where I had a camera, and I was fortunate because I was doing a lot of international travel. And so I'd see some of the different street scenes and people and architecture and so forth. And it really, I wanted to capture that. And it was something that, doing some self-studying and so forth, some of my influencers have been people like Ansel Adams and the F-64 group, Weston's and the son and father. They just gave us so much beauty in black and white. And so I really started looking at that, and I wanted to do it from the concept of the whole thing. I wanted to go from camera to print. So I spent a lot of time on the technical aspects, which being part of an engineering organization was something that really kind of lent itself to that. So the technical portion gave me a lot of satisfaction, and the artistic point was something I had to keep on working on and try to build on. And that I found was really gratifying. I had a dark room and did that. And when I went on travels that were a couple of weeks at a time, I used to have the weekends off, and I was able to go out and shoot maybe a dozen rolls of film, and that was a lot to process when I came home. And my family was very supportive of that. But anyway, I went through that and also joined a number of camera clubs and have been participating in that, doing workshops, and also working with other peers, doing photo shoots and so forth. And I am part of a group called the F16 group, which are 5 other artists down in lower part of Michigan, and we get together and shoot, and we have some exciting things coming up in the future as well. A little bit maybe about my style. What we're seeing at the exhibit, or what we will see at the exhibit, is really more landscapes and a couple of macros shots. But when I first started shooting, I was doing a lot of street scenes, people images. And when you travel to India or to Europe, Germany or England, you see a lot of that. And then also a lot of architecture, which really motivated me to try to capture that. And it was things such as castles or temples or churches. And doing black and white with film, I was doing a lot of extended exposures and so on, which really helped from a lighting standpoint. So I really enjoyed that type of thing. But I've now kind of, I guess, migrated more towards the landscapes and also a little bit of macro or abstract from time to time. And I get satisfaction out of that. And I keep on looking at, okay, how else can I extend my art and become, I guess, more prolific in that area. Some of the things that I've gone through is just looking at what motivates me to shoot. And when you're shooting with a group, it's a tremendous satisfaction you get out of it. With our F64 group or with some of the workshops I've been on, you have so much camaraderie, and it's just a lot of fun. I get enjoyment out of it. And also just being outside and shooting in some beautiful locations in beautiful light, it's invigorating for me, and it really does recharge my batteries. 2020 has been a difficult year for all of us, and this was one way that I found that it let me cope with how the stresses and strains and everything that everyone was having, being able to go out and shoot and just spend time in nature. So that really does help, and it does give me a lot of fun from that standpoint. But when I see something that's really beautiful and I'm looking at a vista or some view, or looking at some composites or compositions, leading lines, I'm thinking, oh God, that looks so great. And I want to capture it, and then I want to share it. And when I look at it, I go through, I'm looking through my lens on the camera, and I'm seeing just a beautiful image, and I get excited about it. I get motivated, and I see that, and it's one of like, okay, how can I share that? And sometimes that has my own interpretation of what I'm seeing too. So it could be something that, a blue sky turns black in a black and white image, but that's my interpretation. And it's one of the things that I find I have that latitude, I guess, that I can do that. And some people like it and maybe some people don't, but it's one that makes me motivated and wanting to do more from that standpoint. So that's a little bit about my background.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pause here a second. I know that we have at least one question that's popped in the chat, but I'm going to start us off by stepping back a little bit. You told us a little bit about how you started with your process and working with film-based cameras and having your own darkroom. I know that many of our attendees and viewers are familiar with those days, but probably a lot are not. So
yes.
You tell me a little bit about what your darkroom setup was like, and maybe even a little bit of your transition to digital, because all the works on display are digital, right?
That's right. That's right. When when going through, my dark room was one where I would develop my own film and the negatives, and then do some contact sheets with that, looking at the negatives, and then I would start to pick out the best ones and start to do some test photos. And what I did was I actually created some portfolios of different countries that I was in, maybe a series of 10. But it was a lot of printing from that standpoint. It was pretty limited. It was just black and white. I didn't get into the color side of it. I wasn't able to cope with all the different colors, so I kept it pretty simple. And I did that for a number of years. And then digital came out, and the camera club that I belonged to in Ann Arbor at that time had they had one night for film and one night for digital, which was, some of the film artists or film photographers, they looked at digital as being, this is not real art or whatever. So, but I found that digital was just growing so fast, and it made it so much more simpler, because now you're not limited to taking just, one or two shots. You can take a series of 10 if you wanted to, just to try to capture the right light, or if it's anything from a nature standpoint, an animal of some sort that's moving, and you want just the right position of that animal and so forth, or looking right at you and that kind of thing. So digital became more easier to use, and I got a digital camera. I guess it was probably in the early 80s, something like that, and or I'm sorry, no, in the 90s actually, and yeah. In the 90s and late 90s. And I used that and took that and traveled around with it. And that was fun. And it took a while to become comfortable with it, moving from film to digital. And also from the processing standpoint, because you take an image digitally and you'd be able to see that on your screen, on your camera, on some of them. And then you would have the opportunity to process that, post-process it. And in that case, I'd be using tools like Photoshop and Lightroom to help me with that. And that was almost like the darkroom. It mimicked it very closely to it, where you're looking at something and dodging and burning as you would do it in a dark room, Ansel Adams types of approaches and so forth, to one now where you're doing dodging and burning from a digital standpoint on a computer screen. So digital is really the way that I went to that. And when I retired from my career, I went into getting a professional digital camera, and one which they call a full frame. Has a lot of megapixels and allows me to really develop some pretty large prints if I want. And that's the thing that I've been using. But I shoot in what's called in raw format. So I don't do any processing on the camera. I do all of my processing on my laptop or on my screens when I'm back in my studio.
So I know that somebody in the chat was asking about your preferred equipment. And also I'm going to note that here I am in the gallery. So you'll notice that there are kind of large wall tags by each piece. Raymond talks about his experience taking that photograph, and we'll get there. But there's also a little comment on each label that talks about that exposure and the camera that you use. So you mentioned, at the very beginning that you kind of got into this from the technical side of it, and the creative and expressive side maybe came a little bit later. Tell us about specifics about your equipment and how much you think that matters.
I started out with my first film camera. Actually, my second film camera that I had was a Nikon, and it's almost like there's this big debate on what's better, Nikon or Canon, and then you also have Fuji and Sony and so forth, especially in the digital area. The cameras are all pretty close. I mean, I prefer Nikon, and it's one that, because I have lenses that fit on my Nikon camera, so I can change my bodies of a camera to get newer technology or more megapixels if I wanted that. And my lenses will continue to work through that. And from a camera standpoint, photography standpoint, lenses are probably the most expensive part of your equipment. And it's something that if you can continue to use that for years and years, it's a very good way to minimize your investment that you're doing in the artwork. So I use Nikon. I use a digital Nikon D850, which is I guess one of the better ones, professional level from Nikon. It's a great camera. I love it. It's a little heavy, but yet it offers a lot of capability, and the resolution is terrific. Low light, and also we're going to have to use some fast speeds as well.
I assume you will, we'll bring this up a little bit later, but I know we'll have questions about printing. So
Okay.
maybe we can talk a little bit more about your project. And I'm just waiting for those questions to come flying in there. So
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's still something that I do, is that I still try to take it from camera all the way to print, and mounting and so forth, and doing all of that framing work. So it's something that, again, gives me the satisfaction of being a complete project or a piece of art. And so I do have my printer I use is a Epson printer, professional level Epson printer. It only will print to 17 inches wide by 25 long. So that limits me from that standpoint. But it's one that I find it's a nice kind of sweet spot for me, a 20 by 30 image. That we'll see some of those in the gallery today. But I am doing some things now where I'm trying to do larger pieces, and I'm doing that on aluminum. So, and I'm using an outside lab for that. So I actually go through the whole process of preparing an image and sizing it and so forth, and then sending over a very large file, a TIFF file, to the lab, and then they print that onto aluminum and bring that back. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't want to make you all dizzy by moving my webcam around, but I am going to show you, so the images that are around my head here. So we'll see, these are all prints that Raymond did at his home studio, right? You did
That's right.
Stuff. And then we have some of the aluminum prints, which again, I'm going to make you guys dizzy for a second. Bear with me. They're over here. So they're pretty large, and I'm going to try to do a pan around the gallery. You can see
good job.
Larger ones, right? So,
right.
So you guys, sorry, that's the dizzy part. So that is pretty interesting. And so I guess let's just sit here for a minute on the kind of technical maker side of things. Is that stressful? Is that anxiety producing to send those images off to a printer when you've sort of grown your practice, taking it all the way through all on your own?
It's a little bit. You kind of lose a little bit of control, but I go through and do test images and so forth. So I send it out to the lab first and do some like contact sheet stuff, looking at different exposures. So that helps me feel a little bit more comfortable with it. I use a great lab out of New York called Illuminize, and they just specialize just in aluminum prints. And printing on aluminum is, I really enjoy it because I like the luminosity that comes out of the print. I mean, it almost glows a little bit for me, and it pops, and it makes a really beautiful image, and it's very durable. So that's the nice thing about it as well. And so I've used that, and I've submitted a number of those to juried exhibits and so forth, and they seem to like that as well. That seems to be popular with people who purchase those, some of the images from the juried exhibits or from the gallery and that kind of thing. So.
Great. Well, that's a nice transition. Thank you, Ray. So we wanted to talk a little bit about your projects and exhibits that you've been involved in. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that professional activity?
Okay, thanks, Liz. Yes, one of the things I did when I retired was I wanted to become more promote, I guess, my work more. And I thought one way to do that was through exhibits and postings. So I worked pretty hard to try to get into some juried exhibits, and I feel very fortunate. I started in 2018 doing that, so for the last 3 years or so. So I've been in over 30 different juried exhibits in the last 3 years. I also post a lot on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram, but Facebook, which is nice, they have some different photo groups. Some are black and white only, some are color, some are landscapes. So I post in those as well. And so with that, I have probably over 100 awards that could be, you know, best of the week, best of the month, or maybe the banner for the club for that month or week. And I've been using that a lot because it's a great way to get some kind of peer recognition and peer feedback on is something good. And, you know, I look at it and I have my wife, Rita, who is also my editor and chief commenter about my work. But so she keeps me grounded, you know, or something. I think, oh, isn't this great? And she's nah. So, but it works out really well. And so I do Facebook a lot. So that's been helpful, and I appreciate that kind of medium. And I just try to keep it just for my photography. So I don't try to do any other things from that. 2021 has been kind of a year that's changing a little bit. I've been really happy working with Crooked Tree, and having this solo exhibit is one of my goals that I've always wanted to do. And so it's going to be a good year. Right now I'm in at Crooked Tree, and also I'm at Gaylord Art Center. I have a couple pieces there. Actually, the one behind me is one of my images from that juried exhibit. It was a great shot up in Munising. But this fall, I'm going to be an artist in resident at Mackinac Island for 2 weeks, and I'm extremely excited about that. This is something I've never done, and it's one that I'll be able to shoot different types or different times of the day and so forth. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to do on Mackinac Island. It's just a beautiful location. So part of that is that I'll be doing a seminar there as well as part of the artist in resident, and then donate a piece or two there as well. And then there's one other thing that I have with our group at 16, which I'm leading up with that. We have a solo exhibit, or group exhibit, solo group exhibit at the University of Michigan later this year as well. And it'll be on Michigan on the different seasons. So we'll have 64 images in that. And so we'll be able to share that with the people at the University of Michigan at the Tolman Medical Center. So.
Great. Now, Ray, I know that you have some images of some of the work that is not on display in the exhibit here. While we're thinking about all those other projects, that other context and collective work, do you want to maybe prepare to share those? Because some of the questions that are popping up in the chat are still about process, but more about your process of taking those photographs, questions about what time of day do you shoot? Maybe through those images, you can tell us about some of those choices you make.
Okay, sure, great. Let me share that screen. Let me see if I can get on there. Are you seeing that?
Looks good.
Okay, so you got it? So this is Yosemite, and so I did this in a black and white Merced River, and you know, the iconic cliffs there and heads. So it was just a beautiful evening. What I try to do is I try to shoot at golden hour, either at dawn or at sunset, and then I might go into blue hour, which is before dawn or after sunset as well. So that gives me just the best light that you can have, and where you're bringing it out, it's a soft light, and it's just a nice way to do that. As part of my process, I also process everything in color first, and then I convert to black and white if I want to. So I'll look at an image and say, well, you know, the colors just, they don't have enough contrast for me, or they're too muted, and where I can bring out the tonal aspects better, say in a black and white. This is one that's also on exhibit in Gaylord. This is called this is a Chris Point lighthouse, and on Lake Superior. And this was, again, this was at golden hour, and just some of the soft light coming in and some of the reflections on the light between the pylons there. This was one, I do a little bit of astronomy shooting. This is the Milky Way, and this is Alabama Hills in California. I was on a photo shoot with Paul James, a great photographer, great artist, and a workshop leader. And so we went out to Alabama Hills and took this, and it was, you know, it was just beautiful getting it between two pieces of rock there, and the light coming in was a tail light from a car that was in the parking lot, so it just happened to work. So this is another one. This is a Mesa Arch in Canyonlands National Park in Utah near Moab. And what I try to do with my art is see something. This was sunset coming in, or sunrise coming in, and the arch, the top part of the arch just glowed of this beautiful red. And looking out into the valley and to the different mesas out there and the river down there, I really try to allow somebody to look in the foreground, and then I want them to lead all the way through into the image itself. So a lot of detail, being able to go out and go into that depth and look, you know, as far as you can see. And so it's an image that I really do enjoy.
Raymond, someone was asking, do you take several shots of the same subject matter and then choose the best one to print?
That's a good question.
A decision-making process, yeah.
Yes, I do. And it's called bracketing. And that's one of the nice things about using digital versus film, is that because film, you're so limited in number of shots you can take. With digital, I mean, you can take as many as you want, basically, based on your card or your storage capacity. So what I do is I'll bracket an image, and especially in where you're doing sunrises, sometimes the light is so different between the others. So I might take 3 or 5 images at different exposure levels and try to pick the best ones out of that, or I might merge a couple of those together, which is a technique called HDR, where you're extending the tonal range of a digital camera, which is not as much as, say, film was. So that would be one thing that would help to mimic what you could do in film. And it's a practice that I don't do all the time, but I do it on a few, especially in a sunrise type of situation. This is if you're familiar with Michigan, you're familiar with the Mackinac Bridge, and this was in January last year, standing on the ice underneath the bridge and taking the undercarriage of the bridge, and just got some really nice clouds out there and a little bit of reflection, you know, a little blue on the ice, and so it was kind of an interesting perspective on the bridge. So.
Raymond, Juanita's asking, do you use polarizing filters at the time of exposure? Depending on if there's clouds and so forth, I will. And if I'm not shooting directly into the light, polarizer I use a lot, actually for water shots as well, because it reduces the glare, say on a running stream or on a waterfall. And so in clouds as well, it will bring out more contrast in the clouds. So I do that. It's one of my go-to filters. So, but you do it at 90 degrees of the sun, so of the light itself. So that's where the polarizer would come in. If you're shooting directly into the sun or opposite, you won't get any difference from a polarizer. I also use some ND filters as well, and that would be where I would do running water, where I want to soften the water, which I did on that earlier one, Chris Point. On this one, you could see that there's no wave action at all on the waves, and I used a ND filter which slows. It doesn't change any of the color, but what it does, it slows the shutter speed down, so it allows the water to soften, to get more of that silkiness and so forth in there.
So Ray, I'm gonna stop you real quick. So do you
Yeah.
prefer to do those using those filters? Because you could certainly use a filter when you're editing in Photoshop or Lightroom. Lightroom, is that right?
Yes.
Obviously, I'm not a photographer, so
You got it right.
do you prefer to do those filtering processes as you're taking the photograph, or when you're in the editing process?
I prefer
on the-
I prefer to use it on the camera.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would be similar, and it's one of the things, again, it reverts back to when I was taking film, when I was doing some
Right.
infrared film. So I'd use a
Okay.
filter on that. But yeah. This was one from Alaska. This was on the National Scenic Byway, Cook's Inlet, and just a beautiful scene, and the clouds or the overcast clouds, I guess you could call them, but the wind on the trees and so forth, just, I think, excited me when I saw it. This is one that I took, which was the reflective pond at Denali, and finally got one day that was clear that I was able to see the actual Denali, and so I love the image. It was just a gorgeous place, and you can see my hat, so for Denali. This is one that was from Lake Charlevoix, and this was just a ice boat going out for a race, and with the sun up there, but it was pretty overcast. But I love the reflections and the softness of it, and it just told me a story. This was from the Smoky Mountains, and this is on a rainy day. It was with a photo shoot with Paul James, and going into an old church in Caves Cove, looking out at the graveyard and so on. And it's inspiring for me because I wanted to capture how many people sat in those pews and looked out and thought about loved ones. And it was a moving one for me. So some people have purchased that as well and felt that it spoke to them, which is one of the things that an artist always loves. I mean, you want to be able to initiate reaction and excitement and memories that come in, not my own, but theirs. I did a little bit of work. Everyone has to go out to Antelope Canyon and shoot, and so it was always in my bucket list to do. And when I first started shooting, when I retired in 2018, we went out to Antelope Canyon and did the tour, the photo tour, and I was just amazed by the shapes and the colors, and it was a moving experience, to say the least. If you have an opportunity, please visit it, because it's special to the Navajo Nation, and I can understand why. This was up in Even Ice Cave in the UP, and trekking back that 2 miles and then hiking up into the the ice slope and so forth, and the cave that's all ice, and crawling in the back. And this is a stalagmite that was being built by dripping water, and it's a little bit of an artist's interpretation on it because of the color, but it was greenish, but I kind of brought that out a little bit more. But it was just amazing seeing that pinnacle, building up, and with the ice around it, and looking out towards the light of the cave, where you get a little bit more light of the sheets that are on the front of the cave. But this is one that I think took second place in a Gaylord, I think, believe it. So this was a little bit of an architecture side. This is a cluster in the St. Augustine's. No, had a memory lapse there for a minute. St. Augustine's, but this was a late afternoon, and so the sun was coming in and gave some great shadows, and just kind of loved the patterns of it and the kind of leading line into a dark window in the back, and that's what it's called, the window. And this is our own pictured rocks, and had an opportunity to do a sunset cruise and with my camera, and took a whole heck of a lot of pictures. But the sun coming back in the evening, and it just glowed on the arch there, and it was like mesmerizing, and it was just I really like it. So, and this one, my last one here, this is from Crooked River, I should say, where we did a photo shoot with, I guess it was like 5, 6 other photographers. We rented a pontoon boat and kind of went down the river, and a day that was going to be cloudy and rainy turned out to be pretty sunny, and weren't many people on the river, and so it was very calm. And this is one of the eddies, looking back there, and some of the trees, and just great, terrific reflections. And so that just drove me to say, oh, you know, there's no color here. This is really a black and white. So you're looking at a reflection on the river, and so very pleased about that. And that was also at Crooked Tree. So yeah.
Yeah, I think actually that was the first image that I saw of yours that I was like, oh, who is this Raymond Gaynor? Right?
I was really fortunate. I mean, it was, I'm very pleased with it. So I'll stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Those of you in attendance, please continue to feed your questions to us. I'm going to go ahead and take this as a point to transition, though. It is really fantastic to get a snapshot of some of the various things that you do with your photographs. But one of the things that I particularly enjoy about this exhibition is the chance to dive into one particular subject, explore one particular idea. So let's do that. Let's talk about your solo show here at Crooked Tree. Again, the show is in our Bonfield Gallery. It's open now. I have the doors closed because of our coffee at 10. We'll be opening those doors back up when we wrap up, and open till 5 today. We're open Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you haven't, I hope that you have a chance to come and join us and see the show in person. But here we are looking at this exhibit, and I would love it, Ray, if you could tell us a little bit about how you got started taking these images at the Offield Viewlands and your relationship with Little Traverse Conservancy. And then we can dig into the images a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I started Little Traverse Conservancy, a great organization, and I learned about it through a dear friend of mine who was on the board at Little Traverse Conservancy, and he invited me out to go to one of their annual meetings, and did that, and we did a walk around at one of the preserves. And from that, I joined the organization and had been a member for a number of years. It's an organization that really wants to retain the beauty of Northern Michigan. They participate and have properties in 5 different counties in Northern Michigan, 1 up in the UP. And so it's one that you see the signs of the different preserves and areas that have been under the stewardship of Little Traverse Conservancy. They have over 60,000 acres. There's, I think, over 110 miles of trails and hiking trails on the different preserves and viewlands. And it's just a great organization. They do a lot of education to students. I think they've had something over like 150,000 students have gone through some of their classes and workshops and hikes and so forth. So they do a great job in looking at conserving our beautiful country that we have up in Northern Michigan. So I'm just proud to be a member of that. A couple of years back, I was up in the UP. I was doing some shooting up at Whitefish Point, and I noticed there was a Little Traverse Conservancy preserve right along near Paradise. And so I took some pictures of it. I thought, oh, let me take a picture of that. And I took some pictures of it, and I shared it with my friend Ian Bunn, and he suggested sending it over to Ann Fleming over at Little Traverse Conservancy. And so I did that, and she really liked it and thanked me. And I then offered to say, you know, if there's anything that I could shoot, I'd be happy to do that and share the images with you. And so I met with her, and we picked up, I guess there were 5 new properties that were coming in under the stewardship of Little Traverse Conservancy. So I went out and shot those one fall over probably a 3 or 4 week period. And then I sent her all of the images, and so they could use that from their own promotional aspect. And it was win-win, because I enjoyed shooting it and having the images and posting them on Facebook and so forth, and then also being able to share that with the Little Traverse Conservancy. So I did that, and then that was, well, probably 2 years ago. Well, while I was in Ann Arbor this last winter, I should say, I noticed that Little Traverse Conservancy was in the process of acquiring the Little Traverse golf course. And I've known Little Traverse Golf Course because I played golf up there a number of times, and it just had fantastic views. I mean, the vistas were just tremendous. Some of the prettiest in northern Michigan. And so what I did was I contacted Ann and I said, you know, I'd really like to shoot this for Little Traverse Conservancy. Would you mind me doing it on behalf of you? And she said, oh no, that'll be fine. You know, so it was still kind of cold and there wasn't that much there. So I started going out in early May. I checked it out in April and it was still kind of like not much there, still a lot of snow. So I waited till May until things started to break a little bit. And the idea was to really capture the lands, not necessarily as a golf course, but to see it more from a nature standpoint or a preserve standpoint. So that's what I was really looking to do. And so I took some images, some early images, and over probably a couple of weeks, and I sent it over to LTC, and they were able to use that as part of their promotional aspects. And then also posted it on the Traverse or Crooked Tree Photography Society webpage and Facebook page. And I think, Liz, that's where you picked it up from that. And so it really kind of kept on going. One, I was looking to do some initial things, but then Liz contacted me and said, hey, you know, what are you doing? And so I thought, well, okay. So we started talking and thinking, well, maybe I can expand that more. And to do it from not only just one season, but to start to look at it as, here's that transition, because that's one of the things that I saw. I saw some of the fairways and greens dying off, but then I saw new flowers coming up and new grasses coming in that replaced a lot of that fairway. So I saw that transition and that reclamation happening, and it was thinking that this would be a great way to kind of capture that as from a standpoint of the viewlands and the vistas that they have and the waters that are out there, such as Crooked Lake or Round Lake or Little Traverse Bay, and being able to kind of bring that in and showing the elevations and so forth. So not from a standpoint of the traditional golf course photography, looking from a tee to green, but now looking at it more from a nature standpoint and a preserve standpoint, and trying to bring that out and also trying to show how that transition is happening.
I think that's one of the things, well, of course, that has been so interesting to me about this project and working on it with you. Really, you've been documenting the land for a relatively short period of time. I mean, it's really just been about a year. But you had a relationship with the land as a golf course, and now you've seen it transition and transform over this past year. And it's been a really unique year, right? With COVID and restrictions and everybody returning outside. I guess I'm wondering if you would speak a little bit to your thoughts about that relationship between, you know, humankind and the land, right? Because you've had that relationship with this particular place. And if we think about the Little Traverse Conservancy's role, their objective to preserve these spaces for the land to be itself, but for us to enjoy them too. What are your thoughts about that? Or is there something that you're trying or hoping that viewers think about when they look at these images?
It is. I mean, one of the things, I mean, as a golfer, I had the opportunity to play at Little Traverse, and it was just beautiful. But there's not a lot of golfers compared to, you know, everyone else. I mean, it's a small percentage of population that has the opportunity to golf and to golf at Little Traverse Conservancy or Little Traverse Golf Course. So I think moving to a preserve and the Offield Family Viewlands, as it's called, is one that it opens it up to so many more people. And I know LTC is looking to really try to promote this more. I mean, there's over 4.5 miles of trails right now within there. They're looking to do a lot more on the property. And, you know, it's good for bikers, it's good for dog walkers, it's good for skiers, cross country, or looking at snowshoeing. And hiking, I mean, at any time of day. So it really lends itself to doing it in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening. So it's just a beautiful place for sunset or for sunrise. And I think promoting or doing the images, I wanted to get people excited about going there and seeing it firsthand. So that's one of the things that we're going to be trying to do, I think, as part of the exhibit is, maybe this is a lead-in for you though, but going in and doing an actual photo shoot there towards the end of May, and then also on a Saturday do a 2-hour walkthrough and just some of the areas where I shot. And I think a naturalist from LTC is going to be there as well, talking about nature aspect of it, and how the change is happening from a reclamation standpoint and what some of the future plans are. So that's going to happen at the end of May as well. So I'm really excited about that. It's just a gorgeous piece of property, and it just offers so much for people to be able to get out and enjoy nature and have a lot of area to do it in. So you don't have to worry about being, socially too close, that kind of thing. And it's a nice place. So to being able to share that, and that's one of the things LTC does. It promotes and helps us keep this area pristine as it is. Michigan is a beautiful state, an adopted state for me, and I just love it.
That's fantastic. I do want to plug these events. I'm going to say them again at the end. Ray will be leading a tour at the Viewlands on May 22nd from 1 to 3 p.m. And that's the tour that he mentioned that we're expecting maybe even a guide from the Conservancy to join in that conversation. Raymond will take you around to some of his sites that he landed on and what caught his eye, and talk a little bit about how and why he photographed those locations. And then on May 27th from 5 to 6 p.m. there will be a tour in the galleries. Now both of these events will be registration based, so visit our website to do that, and we just have to do that because of group and gathering restrictions. So so those are coming up. There was a question that came in through our Q&A that you just touched on a little bit, but step it back and think about your work in general. The question is, as you create your work, what do you want to convey to those observing? Is it something general or specific, and does it change with your subject or your different photos?
It does. I mean, one of the things that when I'm taking an image, I have a tremendous amount of emotion going through, where I'm seeing something through the lens, and as it's composed and the composition of it, and I'm feeling excited about it, because it could be a cast of light coming in through a cloud that just kind of lands down on to some of the ground and gives a great, highlighting the light and the shadows and so forth with that. And it's just something like, oh, I just feel excited about it. And that's something, it could be that strikes a memory of mine when I traveled before, a family memory or a vacation memory or something like that, or just the beauty of it. And so I want to capture that, and I want to be able to then share that. Now, my hope is that it will also generate some excitement for the viewer, that they feel that, oh, they can see that light as well and feel that same excitement. But it could be something different too. I did an exhibit on national parks for University of Michigan a couple of years ago, and a lot of iconic images or scenes that were shot before. And it was one that, I felt excitement taking that. And I know of other people who, say, visited the Grand Canyon would have, see that image, but they would have their own memory that would be sparked by that image. And that's something that I feel very happy about. I mean, that I can initiate or ignite another person's memory or happy experience, something that's important to them. And that's what I think art does. I mean, from my standpoint, that's what I want to try to do, is to really release excitement and memories and happiness, and the beauty of the world and nature.
You're so passionate, and it really comes through with everything that you're saying today and your photography. I'm very inspired. I'm sure many of us are. Liz, we've got a few technical questions that have come through. You've probably seen those. So Ray, we have a couple questions about the aluminum. Juanita had asked earlier, do you find that the prints are as vibrant when it's on aluminum?
Yes, I do. I think they do a great job in the vibrancy of that. Aluminum, I think, actually comes out a little bit more than I use metallic paper when I print myself. It's an Epson metallic paper, and it's a luster, so it's not a gloss. Gloss is just too hard, and so the luster is a nice, softer aluminums to it. And when I print on aluminum, I don't use a silver background. I use a white background. That's what you can choose, and so forth. And that also adds to the luminous of it. So I'm really happy about it.
I think you just answered Trisha's question as well, because they were asking, what is the aluminum primed with? So it sounds like you have a white.
It's a white background, right?
Perfect. Let's see. Juanita had also asked, do you take your pictures in manual mode or using other features from you said manual? Yeah,
so it's back from the film days, and so I feel more comfortable using manual. I control it all, and it's one that I can modify pretty easily and change if I need to change exposure or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. And Joe's asking, do you use prime lens predominantly? So I'm not sure about that question. Hopefully that makes sense to you.
It does. Okay. I use a prime lens for my macros, a 90mm macro lens, but my other lenses are all zooms. So 16 to 35, 70 to 200, so 35 to 120. So what does prime mean? Prime means that the millimeter is fixed. So it's like a 50mm lens, or it's a 35mm lens.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And primes are very nice, very expensive, and heavier than what I have. So I because I travel a lot, and carrying and hiking through, I find that a zoom lens allows me to adjust the depth of field and so forth, or the millimeter of the lens itself. So if I want to zoom in on something or zoom out.
Great. I think we caught up with all the questions. What do you think, Liz? Did we get them?
Yeah, I think so. And that's perfect timing. We technically have 2 minutes left, and I still have a couple of things I want to say. So I'll fit those in. And those of you in attendance, if you have any last minute questions, now is your chance. So I just want to be sure, of course, to thank you once again, Raymond, for your work on this project. It's a beautiful exhibition. I really hope that those of you in attendance who are coming across this talk have an opportunity to join us in Petoskey. We're really thrilled to have our doors open to the public again. Once again, our hours are Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Masks are required on site. We have sanitizer at every entrance. Distancing is very comfortable and possible in our gallery spaces. So I hope you'll join us for this beautiful show. Next week, we will be sharing an online version of this exhibition. We did have a question that I answered through the Q&A that maybe some didn't see, which was, how can you support Raymond and purchase his artwork? Well, you can join us here on site and purchase these prints. Raymond does, and you can speak to this, Ray, edition his pieces, so they are available in multiples and at different sizes. So if you fall in love with that, what, 40 by 60 aluminum print, but don't have the wall for it. There are some options available. So if you're interested, you can contact Crooked Tree Art Center. You can call us at 231-347-4337. And again, we have some events coming up at the end of May. So register and join us for those socially distanced tours. And I guess I managed to talk for 2 minutes. So thank you very much, Ray.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Christy. And thanks for Crooked Tree Art Center for supporting us and for having the opportunity to exhibit. So thank you.
We feel very fortunate to be in the same community. So thank you, Ray.
Okay, thanks, Christy.
All right, thanks everybody. And thanks to
Okay.
Little Traverse Conservancy too. We will catch you next time.
Okay.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.